before the show, and I have some questions about it. I think the listeners might as well, is car leases. Because I think that oftentimes the consumer signs these contracts without realizing what they're getting into. Basically what you're doing is just renting a car for 2 or 3 years with not a lot of protection for yourself as the consumer for what happens to that vehicle, and oftentimes it leaves people on the hook without understanding what they're signing on to.
Ken, I couldn't possibly explain to you how many times. This is not 1 or 5 or 10 or 100 times. This is more like 500, 1,000 times in my 27 years in the car industry, in which people come to me at the end of a lease and say, Greg, why am I getting this bill? And I don't think that many people understand the whole concept of a lease and the reason why this is pushed forward by car manufacturers so aggressively to the regular consumer. So I'm gonna post something to you here, Ken. If this was good for the manufacturer, okay, if this was good for the consumer, if this would benefit the regular citizen, do you think the manufacturer would be doing it?
Not likely. We talk about this all the time on this show. Ultimately, the manufacturer is in it to make money for themselves and in the manner where they can make the most money for themselves. And leasing seems to be the primary way that they're able to turn a profit.
So, but look at it this way. I mean, I'm not against profit. Profit is not the enemy here. I mean, that's why you are in business. That's why you go to work. I mean, it doesn't matter where you work right now. If the company that you're working for is not making profit, guess what? You're out of a job.
Not going to be working for long.
Yes, you're not going to be working there. So, that's not what my beef is. My beef is the lack of understanding that happens. You see, and I've said this many times before, and for those of you that have been listening to the show for the last 13 years, I'm sorry. But I'm in a new network right now, and it is my duty to educate all my listeners here for you not to make the same mistakes that people have made in the past. And this week alone, I have had at least 4 people that have called me saying, Greg, I have a bill. I returned my lease. I have a bill for $3,000, and I don't have the money to pay. Can you help me out? And the answer to that is no, I can't. I can't help you out. So I want to break this down quickly for the folks listening at home right now or in the car. You see, the whole concept of a lease is a figment of people's imagination. Lease is nothing more than another word for renting. So lease means renting. You are renting a place. You see, back in the days whenever you rented a place, they would ask you for security deposits, right? You needed to give somebody 1 or 2 months worth of rent payments in order for them to cover any potential damages that you could have left on that apartment that you were living in, whether you scratch the walls or the floors or the appliances or something happened. They will take this monies off the security deposits that you will provide your renter. Now, when you rent a vehicle, it's not that much different. So for the purpose of this discussion, we will call a lease a rent. So whenever you rent a vehicle for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you are literally exposing yourself every single day that you come out onto the road to the elements, whether it's stone chips, scratches, door dings, car washes, salt, dirt, if you smoke, cigarette burns, all these things are going to be assessed at the end of the lease. So this is what happens, folks. You lease a vehicle, the dealership tries to sell you a lease and protection, and naturally you are a cynic and you believe that they're trying to sell you this stuff just to make more money. And you're not wrong, because every time somebody sells you something, they have to make a little bit of money in order for it to be a viable enterprise. So that's okay. But when you decline the lease and protection, Ken, this is what happens. At the end of the lease, car manufacturers have gotten so smart about this, man. It's so smart. They have hired third-party companies that will do a general inspection on the vehicle that you're returning, and whatever doesn't comply with the guidelines of normal wear and tear, guess what? Will be passed along to you, and you will have to pay for it. On top of that, the vehicle must come back to the dealership in conditions that will pass the regular safety standards for the province of Ontario. So for example, if your tires don't pass safety, guess what? You're on the hook for tires. If your brakes don't pass safety, guess what? You're on the hook for brakes. If you have a headlight that you took a stone chip on, and if you're driving a Mercedes, you all know that to buy an actual headlight casing is $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a headlight.
$7,000?
I'm not joking, man. You know, I went to see my pharmacist. I went to pick up a prescription a few weeks back, and my pharmacist says, "Greg, I'm returning the leads on my Benz, and I had a stone chip on the casing of my front headlight, and they're charging me $6,500 for it."
My God, that's excessive.
No, not really, man. You know, look at it this way. If you're driving a Tesla right now and you have gotten into a fender bender on the highway and you bumped up a quarter panel or a bumper, you're talking $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. That's how much you're talking about.
That seems more feasible, though, for a quarter panel, which is a much more substantial part of the car. We're talking about a headlight.
No, you're talking technology.
That's unreal to me that something as minute as a chip in the headlamp could end up costing you that much money. And that's all on you as the person who, as the consumer who signed the lease. It's like, that's on you to fix it. It just seems like such an arbitrary thing that could happen to anybody, and it's not necessarily it's not the consumer's fault at all. It's just you're driving down the highway, you get hit by a stone, you're following like the dump truck, and then next thing you know, you're on the hook for it. These are the things that people don't consider.
You're on the hook for everything. The moment that you take possession of that vehicle from the dealership, regardless of the brand, you go onto the road, you are responsible for that car. And the fact that you think that you are so special, because this is the problem, right? People start thinking, oh, I'm special. You're not. You're not special at all. On the contrary, you are very, very trivial and common. So whatever happened to someone else, the chances are that it'll happen to you over the next 60, 80, or 100,000 kilometers. So, you know, people, they think that they're too smart. Oh, you know, I'm going to cancel everything. You know, they buy the extended warrant, the lease and protection, and then they go and talk to this, you know, the proverbial friend at home that says, oh, you know, they just sold you this stuff. Cancel it. You don't need it. Well, those people are not there when you get a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 bill at the end because you happen to drive that vehicle, and this will happen. Now, when you don't buy this, a lot of people say, oh, don't worry about it. The dealership will forgive it for me. Well, this is another misconception that happens all the time, Ken, because in the car industry, nothing is free. You know, if the vehicle has a $2,000 damage, those $2,000 have to come from somewhere. Now, when the dealership says to you, don't worry, we'll waive it. No. They don't waive it. They will include it in the cost of the next vehicle. And this is how they keep you stuck. So the moment that you get into a leasing cycle, it is very, very difficult for you to break this, because the company, number one, they're going to try to get you out of that lease before your lease expires. And this is one of the things that Honda and Toyota are so good at. They never let people arrive to the end of the contractual obligation. So for example, if you get into a 48-month lease, I can guarantee you that brand, any one of those two brands, will be calling you a year and a half before your lease is up for you to renew. So you never get any farther ahead. You're stuck on the cycle. Any negative equity will be built into the next payment. And next thing you know, you can never get out of it. That's one of the reasons why I don't like leasing. Now, do I have it? Yes. Do I offer it? Yes, because it's a tool that people have to buy their vehicles. And sometimes, listen, people know better than me, man. What do you want me to what do you want me to do? This happens all the time. The car industry is one of those industries in which you can be doing it for 30 years, sell 50,000 cars, and then people still think they know better than you. But nevertheless, so when this takes place, you get yourself into a cycle that is virtually impossible for you to get out. So now the best way to have an insurance against all these unforeseeable circumstances, and I'm going to give you a list of some of the things that could go wrong with your vehicle. Rims and tires. If you blow up a tire, if you scratch your rims, and if you live in Canada, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are some people that use it as as a normal parking technique when they hear this and this scratch in the alloy wheel against the curb. Oh yeah, I'm in the right spot right now. Are you one of those ones? One of those guys, Ken?
Unfortunately, we've discussed this before. I do have a bigger vehicle, and where I live in East Toronto, really the only place to park is street parking. And they're much narrower streets where you can sort of only squeeze one car down the middle of the street at any given point in time. There's cars parked on both sides. So I really have to get probably about within 2 inches of the curb. If I don't get that close, then I'm going to have people sideswiping me as they're pulling through the laneway. So unfortunately, due to that, I do have a little bit of a scratched up rim on the passenger side seat of my car, just because I have to sort of back it in and make sure that I'm nice and tight on the curb.
Well, and this is what happens. So if you were leasing this vehicle, which you aren't, thankfully,
I'd be in big trouble.
You would be in big trouble because unlike what you may think, folks, whenever you buy OEM parts, which are the original factory equipment from the manufacturer, those parts are not inexpensive. I mean, an OEM set of wheels is going to cost you $1,000, $1,200 for one wheel. So if you don't have rim and tire protection for your lease or at your lease end, you are literally just exposing yourself to unnecessary charges. And, the problem is this, that if you don't protect the future self, if you don't protect your future self for the eventualities that something like this could happen, then you are going to be on the hook for all of this. Now, you got to remember this, and I've said this a million times, every insurance that you have, every guarantee, every warranty that you have is a complete waste of money until you need it. And when you need it, you're a genius. So, you're taking a chance. Yes, of course you are, because you don't know if something is going to happen to the vehicle. But the likelihood it is that if you are driving that vehicle for 4 years and you have it on the road for 100,000 kilometers, the chances are that something will happen to it. Next is excess wear and tear. So if the inside of your vehicle, if you burn the seat, if you have any door dings or scratches, and they are inevitable. You go to the superstore, you go to the grocery store, some buffoon is going to let that shopping cart slide into your car, or you're going to park too close to someone at the mall. They're going to open the door, boom, you get a door ding. Guess what? You're on the hook. How much money does it cost to repair a door ding? It all depends on the size. You can go from $300 to $1,000 depending on where it is. And often, Murphy shows up traditionally, and Murphy's Law says that when something can go wrong, guess what? It will go wrong. Then, let's say that you're one of those people that really love taking care of their vehicles. So you take it to the car wash, but you don't take it to the Toshlet car wash. You take it to the regular car wash with the brushes. And then this thing does a number on you. You know what I'm talking about?
Those car washes are the worst, aren't they?
They're terrible. They're terrible. So you do this, and the inspection company can prove that this is excess wear and tear on your paint. Guess what? You are paying for this. So this vehicle has to comply with all the minimal standards of normal wear and tear. And on top of this, we're talking about the safety standards. So if that vehicle is put through the shop and there is anything within it, whether it's lights, whether it's tires, whether it's brakes, or anything that has to do with the safety standards according to the province of Ontario, guess what? You are paying for it. And last but not least, kilometers. Whenever you rent a vehicle, you go on vacation, you rent a vehicle. You can rent a limited kilometers, which unfortunately is not a thing when you lease a car. Or you can buy an X number of kilometers. With leases, often people underestimate the amount of traveling they will be doing. And they buy 16,000 kilometers a year because they think, I'm not going to drive as much, or I'm going to drive my wife's or my husband's car, and then we're going to keep the kilometers low. Why? Because at that point, the payments are very low. So they underbuy kilometers. What they don't know is the following, that when you buy the kilometers up front, they are cheaper than when you pay them as a penalty. So if you buy them up front, you can pay 10, 12, 15 cents per kilometer. But then when you return the vehicle, those kilometers are not 10, 12, 15 cents per kilometer. They're 20, 23, and 25 cents per kilometers plus tax. So now, not only you are paying more, but you are literally compounding the amount of money that you were responsible at the end of the lease in order for you to cut the ties with whatever manufacturer you happen to be renting a vehicle from.
That's a pretty quick too, right? Like when you consider that, you're basically saying that that's $1,000 if you go 4,000 kilometers over whatever you thought that you were going to have beforehand. And that's so easy to do. 4,000 kilometers is nothing. It's your commute to work. It's driving the kids to soccer practice. It adds up quickly.
Dude, I mean, if you extrapolate that and you annualize that figure, let's say that you drive an additional 300 or 400 kilometers a month more than what you are allowed to. And you do that over 5 years. Imagine the amount of money that you have to pay up front. You're talking $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in additional kilometers. And at that point is when you're stuck. Because now you have to buy that same brand no matter what, because they're going to roll that deficiency into the next payment. And that is a big problem, folks. So the moral of the story, before we go to a small break, and again, if you have any questions in relation to this, you can call us at 416-870-1050. We are Canada's largest automotive radio show. So the moral of the story is this. If you're renting a vehicle, aka leasing, do not, under any circumstance, leave that dealership. You don't even have to buy it from me. I don't care. It doesn't matter what you're leasing, especially if you're buying luxury cars. And I'm going to repeat this. Especially if you're buying luxury cars, do not, under any circumstance, folks, leave that dealership without your lease and protection. You are exposing yourself to be stuck into a huge bill at the end of your term, and that is the last thing that you want. Surprises are not a good thing when it comes to the car industry.